Tonight, AEW presents a special edition of Dynamite on TNT titled Winter is Coming. This is all about the AEW World Championship main event between AEW World Champion Jon Moxley and the number one contender Kenny Omega. Now, of course, Kenny Omega became the number one contender for the AEW World Championship after winning the AEW World Title Contendership Tournament that culminated at Full Gear with Omega defeating Hangman Page to become the number one contender. And now, after weeks of hype, we have Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley. Omega versus Moxley number 2 after the Lights Out match at Full Gear last year. It's the anticipated rematch. The build up to this one's been quite interesting, actually. It's, to be honest, for me, it's been all about Kenny Omega. It's all been about Kenny Omega, the build up to this one, because it's been about the return of the cleaner. It's been about the return of the cleaner and these heel tendencies from Kenny Omega, that what I've really enjoyed about Omega's performance over the last few weeks is that, look, we've known that Kenny Omega is turning heel all the way back since All Out, back at the end of August. So coming into September, we knew that Kenny Omega was turning heel. And even right now, it doesn't feel like he's fully flipped the switch yet. He's not fully there when it comes to being the heel. He's teasing it. And as the weeks go on, more and more and more, Kenny Omega becomes more of the cleaner, becomes more of the heel, becomes more over the top, right? With the over the top entrance, with the facial expressions, with the possible attacking of Jon Moxley backstage, all that stuff. It's all been about Kenny Omega, but it doesn't feel like we're properly right there for the Kenny Omega heel turn. Maybe that comes tonight. Maybe that comes tonight during the Winter is Coming event. Maybe that comes tonight and Kenny Omega becomes the AEW World Champion. It's certainly a possibility because, as I mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, Jon Moxley was attacked backstage. Now, it was a mystery attacker. We don't know who did it. It was during the Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley contract signing. Omega sort of looked around and said, well, I don't know who that was. He signed the contract anyway. But then Jon Moxley got his revenge last week when Kenny Omega was making that grand over-the-top entrance. We had Jon Moxley attack Kenny Omega. And I actually thought that, like many people, the camera work and the production work into this attack by Jon Moxley that was done by AEW was absolutely spectacular. It really was fantastic. The way they shot it. Of course, Kenny Omega, when he makes his new grand entrance now, they have him behind, like a sheet or something that basically gives him a silhouette. You know it's Kenny Omega there. It's the silhouette of Kenny Omega. But the way they shot it last week was Kenny Omega standing there. It's the silhouette of Kenny Omega. We're expecting everything's normal. And then suddenly, what do you see? Suddenly, you see the Jon Moxley silhouette come behind him. Kenny Omega has no idea. You can't actually see them. You can just see the outline of them. You can just see the silhouette of them both. And then Jon Moxley just starts attacking Kenny Omega. You only see the silhouette attack Kenny Omega first, and then they get the camera, and then you realize that it's Jon Moxley, and he's attacking Kenny Omega. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Love the camera work. Love the production of AEW. To be fair, this was a big concern, right, of AEW. I'm going off on a tangent here, but this was a big concern of AEW when they first started Dynamite, was what was the production of Dynamite going to look like? Is the production going to look high level? Is it going to look world class? That's the issue between any pro wrestling companies when they've been competing with WWE in the past, isn't it? Is that WWE's production level is second to none. It's the best production of, to be honest, their production of live entertainment. They're probably the best at producing live entertainment. They've got it so down to a science, so down to a formula that it's almost too crisp now and it doesn't feel live. That's the best thing about AEW, is their production quality is really high, but not too high to the sense of you don't lose that it's live. It does have that rawness, that energy of feeling live, of maybe the slip-ups and slight miscues when it comes to production, or the way the commentators speak and the way the commentators throw the graphics. It's slightly, I don't want to say bad, because it's not, but it's just got that edginess, that rawness. Ironically, that was meant to be for, Monday Night Raw. That's the reason it was called Raw, because it was live, it was raw. AEW has that quality. So that's a tangent, but that's something worth mentioning. I thought I wanted to mention that about the Jon Moxley attack on Kenny Omega last week. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're talking about the return of the cleaner. That's what I think this whole storyline has been about, the return of the cleaner, and the fact that it's a different Kenny Omega. The old Kenny Omega failed against Jon Moxley last year. It lost to Jon Moxley at Full Gear in 2019 in that barbaric match with the gratuitous violence. That Kenny Omega wasn't good enough to beat Jon Moxley, or couldn't beat Jon Moxley. But Kenny Omega doesn't seem bitter about it at all, does he? Because when he's talking about his interviews, he's mentioning that was a lights out match. It's not even on the win-loss record. So I never lost to Jon Moxley. And talking about, if you put me in an environment where I thrive, a standard wrestling match in the ring, I will win and I will become the AEW World Champion. And again, it's that hint of a heel. Or maybe it's more than a hint there. It's, a full fistful of a heel there. But you know what I mean. It's not officially a heel yet, but that's what I think's been brilliant. That's what I think this whole story's been about. Kenny Omega will be involved in the tournament, splitting up from Hangman Page, losing the tag team titles. This feud now with Jon Moxley being revisited. It's all about the return of the Cleaner. It's all about the return of the Cleaner. Now, of course, there's been talks and rumours about Jon Moxley working with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Of course, he's still currently the IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion, and he's worked with New Japan in the past. Of course, as we get to December, everyone starts thinking about New Japan, about Wrestle Kingdom in January. Now, a lot of people have been speculating, considering Jon Moxley worked Wrestle Kingdom last year. Is he going to be working Wrestle Kingdom again this year? If so, if he was going to compete at Wrestle Kingdom in January, if he was going to compete and defend his United States Championship at Wrestle Kingdom, he would have to go over to Japan. Now, those travel issues aren't as difficult as they once were. Previously, you couldn't fly into Japan. It was just impossible. Now, you can. We've seen pro wrestlers travel between countries now, but most countries have a heavy quarantining period. Therefore, if Jon Moxley is to compete for New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom, if he flies out, he's going to have to quarantine for about 2 weeks or so, maybe even longer. Therefore, people are rightfully so speculating, wow, if Jon Moxley is going to be off TV and out of the country for a while, maybe this is the opportunity for Jon Moxley to drop the AEW World Championship to go and defend his United States Championship with New Japan. That makes a lot of sense. It's a reason to drop the title, but Tony Khan did a media call yesterday, and he spoke about that Jon Moxley isn't going to perform for New Japan. He isn't going to wrestle at Wrestle Kingdom. We've seen that Jon Moxley has been pretty steadfast in his beliefs in that he is not going to go to unnecessary risk in the pandemic. This was a guy that didn't test positive for the virus, yet he didn't attend TV tapings because his wife had tested positive. He wanted to make sure everything was as safe as possible. Therefore, he decided not to attend the tapings, and AEW rightfully said you should probably stay at home as well. So that would show that maybe Jon Moxley, he's thinking, you know what, the issue of quarantining, leaving the country, possibly exposing myself with these long travels, these long flights over to Japan, it's not worth the risk, and Jon Moxley isn't going to wrestle for New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom. And according to Tony Khan, that's definitely the case. So I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. Tony Khan's hardly going to come out and say, yeah, Jon Moxley's wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom in January and he's going to drop the world title on Wednesday. He's hardly going to say that. So we have to take that with a pinch of salt. We'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, that whole deal of, well, he could drop the title because he's going to wrestle for New Japan and he's going to be off TV for several weeks at a time. Because think about it, if he flies out, he's got to quarantine in Japan for 2 weeks. If he flies back, he's got to quarantine again in the United States for 2 weeks. That's 4 months of quarantine for Jon Moxley for 1 or possibly 2 matches at Wrestle Kingdom. It's not going to happen, I don't think. So that whole thing of him possibly working New Japan as a reason to drop the title, I think has been debunked. My prediction for tonight, by the way, I think Kenny Omega is going to become the world champion. I think Kenny Omega is going to beat Jon Moxley and become the AEW World Champion. The reason why I think this is because I think Kenny Omega is the best option. I think that I can't think of any other person right now that Jon Moxley could drop the championship to and it be as credible as Kenny Omega. What other options are there right now? There aren't many. There aren't many options to who would Jon Moxley drop the title to. He's not going to drop it to Chris Jericho. Quite frankly, I could see Chris Jericho never win the title again. Chris Jericho won the title because they needed an established name, a high-level established name to give the world title to make the company and the title seem credible and to get some attention. Chris Jericho fit that option. Then Jon Moxley won it, continues to give the title credibility and the company credibility. But now, who could Jon Moxley drop the title to? He's not going to drop it to Jericho. He's not going to drop it to Cody Rhodes, I don't think. Cody can't even challenge for the title, and Cody's talked about overcoming that hurdle, and he said he's not going to do that. Who else could he drop it to? Could he drop it to Hangman? I don't think he's ready, and he's a babyface. On the heel side of things, he's not going to drop it to Brian Cage, beat him, not going to drop it to Lance Archer or anything like that. There aren't many options there. There aren't. Kenny Omega's the option. Kenny Omega is the best option right now for Jon Moxley to drop the AEW World Championship to. So that's why, quite frankly, I think he's going to drop the title because there aren't any other options. There aren't. And when I think about Jon Moxley's AEW World Championship run so far, look, it's been really difficult. It's the same as Drew McIntyre's in WWE when he won the World Championship. It was the same as Braun Strowman when he won the Universal Championship at WrestleMania. It's been difficult, right? Jon Moxley won the AEW World Championship back in February at Revolution. I mean, he had, 1 or 2 episodes of Dynamite before, obviously, the pandemic really hit, and then fans had to leave the arena, and we haven't had fans back in since at a full capacity. I know there are some fans now at the Dynamite tapings and Dynamite and AEW pay-per-views, but it's been a really difficult run for him, and it hasn't been easy. There's been multiple hurdles and obstacles for Moxley to overcome for this World Championship run, and it's been difficult. I think his title run has done well, considering. I thought his match against Jericho was fine. I thought the opening few matches of his title reign were very underwhelming. The whole Jake Hager thing I didn't get, and it just didn't do it for me. We then had Brian Cage, which I enjoyed, but I worried about Brian Cage losing. And does it feel like he's recovered since then? I don't know. I know technically he didn't lose. Taz threw in the towel. Then he had Lance Archer, defeated him. To me, it just kind of feels like with Jon Moxley, it's build up the monster and then Jon Moxley slays the monster. The MJF feud, I thought that was going to be the real big feud for Moxley after a few feuds that were slightly underwhelming. The MJF one for me was disappointing. I thought the match at All Out was very good. I thought the match at All Out was great, and that's what the match and feud should have been. The issue I had with the Jon Moxley MJF feud was that I didn't get why they had to put a gimmick on it. I didn't get why suddenly MJF had to become presidential and try and, it was about politics, wasn't it? It was about campaigning for a world championship opportunity. It wasn't necessary. I felt that was a mistake by AEW. They didn't need to put a storyline like that on there. They could have just had MJF being MJF and Jon Moxley versus Jon Moxley. This is the company, remember, that was going to do this sports-orientated, real-life product, and you've got MJF campaigning. It just felt odd. It felt very, very odd, and I felt that was a bit of a miss. Like I said, really enjoyed the match they had at All Out, but the storyline, not for me. I think Jon Moxley's best work during his world title reign has been most recently with Eddie Kingston. I thought that Eddie Kingston feud was fantastic. I thought the Eddie Kingston match at Full Gear was fantastic. I thought the promos, I thought all of it. Eddie Kingston, Jon Moxley, massive tick. I think that's the best world title feud that he's been involved in, quite frankly. But this Kenny Omega stuff has been next level. This has been very interesting, very fun. We haven't had the real long build to the pay-per-view, but it hasn't needed that. It hasn't. I think Kenny Omega right now is doing his best work that he has done in AEW. Of course, he's had great matches in AEW. He's had the match against Jericho back at Double or Nothing 2019. I thought he really found his stride with the Hangman Page tag team. But there is this weirdness with Kenny Omega, isn't there? Coming from New Japan, there was so much hype and so much excitement for Kenny Omega wrestling consistently on weekly TV in America after years of being in New Japan and this huge reputation and hype of being in New Japan. I think the issue was that he would never and was never going to live up to those expectations. You have to remember when it comes to New Japan, and people don't like to talk about this, but it's the facts. Kenny Omega had these fantastic matches in New Japan. 6-star matches, you can't argue with that. They were some of the best matches I've seen. They blew my mind. They were fantastic. But people only saw those matches. People didn't watch New Japan week to week or even pay-per-view to pay-per-view or event to event. They didn't do that. They only saw these big matches and said, whoa, when Kenny Omega comes to America, he's going to be doing this every single week. And that was never the case. That was never going to be the case. He has those performances in him. If you set it up right, if you have the right opponent, he can help deliver that. That's absolutely the case. Kenny Omega is one of the best wrestlers in the world. But to say that he's going to be doing that every single week on TV was just so far beyond the realms of possibility that I think people were always going to be disappointed. I think now we've got to a point where we know what to expect from Kenny Omega. We know the level to expect to. It was too high before, now it's more realistic. And the issue was also is that he was in the background. The World Championship scene and the main event scene was dominated by Jericho, by Cody, and by Moxley. And Kenny Omega was kind of in the background because of that. Kenny Omega had the feud with Moxley, that was great. But it's kind of, we've always been waiting for this cleaner version. We have been waiting for the cleaner version of Kenny Omega to arrive. It feels now that Kenny Omega is doing his best work. It feels like Kenny Omega is more relevant now, and I feel like he's really hit his stride. So I'm going to go Kenny Omega to win tonight. I think he's going to win. Tony Khan has also spoken about TNT have basically said to him, we're willing to stick with the World Championship match as long as it goes on for. So there is a possibility for an overrun tonight, which is incredibly rare. TNT, you know, at the top of the hour, they go straight into their TNT film every single week. They absolutely do. What's funny is they air it before Dynamite and after Dynamite. So when it gets to 10 p.m., they go straight off the air and straight to that film. Maybe that's not the case this week. We might actually get a bit of an overrun. It's a TV special. It's a World Championship match. If they're ever going to do an overrun, it'd be for a match like this. So there is a possible overrun. And the fact that it's a TV special. Look, it's a TV special. It's the end of the year. You know, they lost in the ratings. Lost in the ratings last week. NXT drew more live viewers. TV special, title change, end of the year, coming up to the holidays, coming off of the Thanksgiving holiday. It's the perfect setting to do a title change. And I think the title change is the right thing to do. I think the title change is the right thing to do for all parties right now. I think Kenny Omega becoming the world champion elevates him once again, and you get him back to the main event level of Kenny Omega. Not that people expected from New Japan, like I said, but to the level of, okay, this guy is a main event guy. He's always felt like a main event level guy, but he hasn't been consistently in the main event. And I think him being world champion, consistently having that spotlight on him, he can then start to put together this chronology of just fantastic matches. Every single pay-per-view, every single week, these amazing world title defenses, and bring more of this heel, cleaner character out of him. I think that's why it's the right thing to do. On top of that, Jon Moxley, I think he's one of these characters that's going to be better in the chase. There are certain characters and certain wrestlers over time that are better as world champions, better holding the title, but there are certain superstars and wrestlers over time that are better chasing the title. Steve Austin was better in the chase. The Undertaker was better in the chase. The Rock, I think he was better in the chase, but he was a good champion. Triple H, always better as champion, never as the chase. That's why he was champion so much and for so long, because he was better as champion. I think Jon Moxley, I think he's better in the chase. He's the Stone Cold kind of character. I'm not saying he's Steve Austin before people get angry, but he's a Stone Cold kind of character. He's a Stone Cold kind of gimmick. He is better in the chase. He is better chasing the title and being the lunatic madman and give no F's kind of character. That's Jon Moxley. That's Jon Moxley. He does make a good world champion, but I think he's better chasing the title than holding on to it, if that makes sense. So that's why I think it's the best thing to do. Plus, you know, Jon Moxley's got to lose eventually. When it comes to singles action, I don't think he's lost in AEW. He's something like 21-0. He's undefeated in singles action, 21-0. He's 22-1 in 2020, and that loss was in a tag team match. I mean, he's got to lose a singles match eventually. I mean, he can't be Goldberg, right? He's not. I understand Jon Moxley, you know, incredible wrestler, incredible promo, legitimate main eventer, big global talent. Jon Moxley, everyone knows Jon Moxley from his run in WWE and his ability in the ring and on the mic, but he ain't Goldberg. He's got to lose eventually. And I know the whole deal with MMA fighters, they can be unbeaten for the whole of their career, and that's what Jon Moxley's gimmick, I guess, kind of is right now. I don't know. He has to lose eventually. He has to lose eventually, and I think he'll be better in the chase. So that's why I think the title change is coming tonight, because he's got to lose eventually. Kenny Omega, I think he's like 7-0 in singles action in 2020, so someone's losing tonight. Someone's losing that singles record tonight. He's 24-5 overall in 2020. I just think Kenny Omega wins. To me, there just seems no other option. I think there are other options that obviously Moxley can drop the title to, but I just think Kenny Omega's the right choice. I think Kenny Omega's the right choice. I think Kenny Omega winning the title tonight as well. You can extend this feud. You can extend Omega versus Moxley all the way to Revolution if you want to, or maybe into January at Bash at the Beach. My point being, if Moxley wins tonight, the feud's over, because where does Kenny Omega come back from there? He doesn't. So I think one, I think Kenny Omega has to win. 2, it extends the feud, and 3, there's no other options. There's no other good options for Moxley to drop the title to right now apart from Kenny Omega. It makes the most sense for me. And you've got a possible another TV special, maybe at the end of the year. Tony Khan has talked about maybe wanting to do something for Christmas or New Year. We know Bash at the Beach is probably going to happen in January because it happened last year in January. We're not going to have the Jericho Cruise episode of Dynamite, unfortunately. Nevertheless, we're going to get a Bash at the Beach at some point. You can do the Moxley-Kenny Omega rematch there. Maybe you can make it 1-on-1 and maybe have the, I don't know, whatever. I think that there is absolutely possibilities to extend the feud, but that involves having Kenny Omega win tonight. So I think Kenny Omega is going to win. As I mentioned, the world title's never lost, never changed hands on Dynamite. What a perfect time to do it. Then starting to tonight. They lost last week to NXT in the ratings, barely, and they didn't lose in the demos. But tonight, with a world title main event, a world title change, they can do massive numbers for this week and next week. And I think the biggest match that AEW can do right now is Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley. There isn't a bigger match they can do right now. Tell me a bigger match that they can do. There isn't. Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, World Championship, main event on TNT. It's a huge match. And I disagree with people say I should have saved it for pay-per-view, because more people will watch this match tonight than more people will watch the pay-per-view. That's just a fact. Why not give your best product on TV in a main event like this, get a big rating, a big number, then you can get more people for your pay-per-view when you do the rematch. It makes the most sense to me. There are so many reasons why I think it's the right idea and the best option for Kenny Omega to win the World Championship tonight on Dynamite, on the Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley tonight on Dynamite? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys and chat about AEW here on the channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.